Rearmed Ginnungagap brings Arcane Void as the inheritable Arcane Dagger for all of the dagger units, and in this video I'll be going over the best users and the builds that you can run with this weapon. So Arcane Void is a 14 might Arcane Dagger which gives you -1 special cooldown, and the HP threshold of this weapon is going to be at or above 25%, and if you meet that threshold then you can get +5 to all of your stats and can debuff even more stats on the foe in the combat, and this is essentially the sabotage effect on foe but in the combat. So we have seen the sabotage status before with the sabotage skills, and this basically picks up the highest penalty on each stat on the opponent and then doubles it. So this allows you to get even more debuffs on the enemies, which does have good synergy with the innate Dagger 7 debuffs that, Arcane Void has got. And you can also just get even more debuffs if you run the good allies, which can debuff the opponent, panic them, or give you the foe penalty doubler status, or even give the opponent the sabotage status. And then this can also give you the guaranteed follow-up attack, and finally it also gives you special cooldown charge +1 on both your attacks and the enemy's attacks. So overall this weapon is pretty nice for dagger units, and it is going to be the best combat dagger unless we get another Arcane Dagger soon, which is specialized for the speedy units. But even then, speedy units can make use of Arcane Void because of the extra debuffs that you can get on the enemy with the sabotage effect, and it can also help the slower dagger units because of its guaranteed follow-up attack. So overall it's a pretty universally useful weapon, and it can also help you trigger lethality a lot easily because of the special charges built in the weapon. And Arcane Void does make lethality as a 3 cooldown special, and you can get lethality and all of the premium skills at the same time from Ginnungagap if you do have the prerequisite fodder. Arcane weapons cannot be run with preferred skills, so you have to keep the stat allocation in mind for many of the units, and a lot of times Arcane Void is pretty much going to be a slight upgrade or a side grade for many of the units, so it is not exactly going to be the best thing ever, but still, if you really love that unit then it can help you with the trade-off. And if a unit already has a good preferred weapon, then they don't really need Arcane Void, and you can probably use it on some other units who may never get a weapon refine. Infantry units enjoy Arcane Void quite a lot because it frees them up from running something like a Pledge skill in their slot C, and they can easily run a Tempos 4 skill, which we have gotten nowadays, and they also have access to stuff like Finish skill, which is going to be giving them the healing and even more true damage. And in tier 1, I'm going to be having Patty here because Patty is pretty much the peak of the Infantry Dagger units as a recent demote that we have gotten, and she has got the attack, speed, defense, and everything that you could want. And then the next best option is going to be Cat, who we did see in the Hall of Forms. So she does have good offensive stat spread, but obviously not as much attack as Patty. Renak is also going to be there, even though he's not really seen all that much. And Colm is also another demote unit who can be in tier 1 because of his offenses and his recency. Then we move on to tier 2, and for Legault, this is going to be a bit of a trade-off because you're going to be trading off the speed-based damage reduction in his weapon and also the +5 true damage for getting -1 special cooldown and also special charges, and also the sabotage effect, which I think is pretty nice. So if you're a big Legault fan, then this could be an option, but if he's not at top of your priority, then you can still make use of his weapon. Gaius is of course one of those older units who would love Arcane Void, and he does have the speed, especially with the Resplendent stats. And Laurum is also a dagger unit who has access to dance. It doesn't really give her any kind of utility, but still, if you want her to be a lot better in combat, then this could be an option. And Kaze is also a unit who does get the slight upgrade from Arcane Void because it's pretty much his weapon without the true damage and giving him special charges without the speed check and also the sabotage effect. So it's not the most insane upgrade, but still can be helpful as he can stack up even more stats because of the sabotage effect. And again, same as Legault, if you're a big Kaze fan, then this could be an option, and he does have the resistance to make use of the ploy skills. Then we have got Resplendent Sothe, Resplendent Kagero here with their high attack stat, and Dorothea and Tethys are also going to be there as dancers. Now Dorothea, even though she's a dancer, she does have the offenses, so she will be benefiting from Arcane Void, and then Tethys is going to be using her resistance for the ploy skills, the sabotage skills, and you can even run Temari Dagger if you really want to, but again, if you want to have better combat, then this could be an option. Starting off tier 3, we do have Nier Takumi here, and a lot of the older units like Halloween Sakura, which you don't really see that much, but still, they are in a dire need of an upgrade if you're a big fan of them. And then Jafar and Matthew can also make use of this because their preferred weapons are long outdated. Same goes for Saizo, and then we have the other Hoshiden summer dancers in Ryoma, Elensi, and Olivia, and also Xander, who is a bit more unique because of his high defense, so he does appreciate the guaranteed follow-up attack. And finally, we have got Summer Frederick finishing off tier 3. In tier 4, we do have Felicia and Jacob. Unfortunately, Felicia just does not have very high attack stat. It's the lowest one out of all of the dagger units here, and unfortunately for her, there are going to be units with high resistance and speed that can pretty much do the same thing as her, like Kaze for example, and then even Halloween Sakura. And Jacob's stat allocation doesn't really do him too many favors, especially comparing him to the other dagger units above him. And we're going to be having a refine for Layla, most likely in early 2024, and then Gangrel is going to be getting a refine in March 2024, and Julian should be getting one in mid 2024. So these are the 3 dagger infantry units that you may want to put off giving Arcane Void to and see if their weapon refine is better or not. And for a lot of the dagger units, even like Chad, Ilger, Flora, Kronia, they do have weapon refines that do make them a bit more unique. So in my opinion, they can keep their preferred weapon and they're not necessarily going to be the main candidates for Arcane Void. If you're going to be building up infantry units with Arcane Void, then Speed Defense Tempo 4 is going to be the skill that you run in the slot B so that you can get the full tempo effect along with the Null Guard so that you can easily charge up Lethality and trigger it on your double, and it goes really well with the special charges that this weapon gives you. And it also gives you damage reduction piercing, which is helpful on the first hit where you're not going to be triggering Lethality, so at least you can cut the damage reduction of the enemy in half. And it also has good synergy when you're going to be running a finish skill so that it can give you the healing and also true damage. And slot C is mainly going to be there so that you can boost up your attack and speed even more, especially for many of these older dagger units who are going to be competing with the speed tiers of the modern times. So might as well stack as much speed on them as possible. You can also go with the route of giving the prime skill on many of these dagger units that especially have good enough bulk to, retaliate back to the melee enemies. And Panic Smoke 4 could be a pretty good option that you can run with the prime skill so that you can get another status effect, and you can also get the attack Oath Echo so that you can have the order status. And physical null follow-up is going to be helpful again for the damage reduction halving on the first hit, and overall having the null follow-up effect is still helpful even though you do have the guaranteed follow-up attack from Arcane Void, which kind of acts as a pseudo half null follow-up, but still it is not the actual null follow-up, so it can still be run in the slot B, and it could be run with a modern unit like Patty or even any other dagger unit that comes out in future who has more bulk. And then we also have the route of just stacking up a lot of damage reduction with Remote Sparrow and Fleeting Echo as the X skill, and this could be run so that he can have better bulk in the player phase and so that he can survive and then trigger lethality on your double attack. You can also go with Attack Speed Hexblade because that's also an option that infantry units have got, and you can run Ploy skill in the slot C so that you can debuff the enemy and also get the exposure status on them, and also just disable Grand Strategy, Bonus Doubler, and Treachery. So it could be helpful, and especially with the Hexblade skill, debuffing both enemies' defense and resistance before the first combat can be helpful. You can also just stack up all kinds of damage reduction with Remote Sparrow, Brash Assault 4, and Fleeting Echo to have 65% damage reduction on foe's first attack, and Brash Assault 4 is going to be helpful so that you can get the damage reflection. Even though it does overlap with the guaranteed follow-up attack of the weapon, still it is going to be pretty good because of the true damage that you can get out of it, and you can just trigger lethality on the double and do a lot of damage, especially with the damage reflection. And then we also have Attack Speed Unity as the option if you're going to be using Legendary Male Robin for the Grand Strategy stacking, and Speed Smoke 4 could be an option for a faster dagger unit because again the sabotage effect in the Arcane Void is going to be appreciating the debuff on the enemy. Finally, if you're going to be building up the dancers, then you can stack up their resistance like Tethys for example and provide the support to your teammates with the sabotage skill and the ploy skill. And if you don't really have the resistance, then even then we do have the tier 4 dance skills like Rock Slide Dance and Firestorm Dance, which could be run, which also gives you the Canto 1, and it could be run with the Oath Echo skill, and a lot of slot C skills are available for providing the support. And you can also run Infantry Pulse 4, especially if you get Fire Flood Boost 3 on a dancer like Xander, and if you want to provide that pulse support to your allies. Even though lethality is going to be the main special that you're going to be using with Arcane Void, you can still try and use the other specials, especially if you have high defense or resistance like Saizo or Felicia, and you can try and stack up the true damage from the Finish 4 skill and Special Spiral 4, and that way you can have better damage output, especially for someone like Felicia who does have low attack stat, and she can get even more true damage by running the Ploy skill and getting the exposure status on the enemies. And you can trigger your specials while piercing through the damage reduction with Special Spiral 4, and the special charges from Arcane Void is going to be helpful in setting up Special Spiral 4 so that you can always retaliate back with Ignis or Glacies or trigger it on your double. And even though might not be the most optimal option, it is still an option that you can do on these kinds of units who do have high defense or high resistance. Dagger Fliers can enjoy Arcane Void because they don't really have access to the pledge skills like the infantry units, so getting the special charges is going to be pretty nice for them. And in tier 1 I'm going to be having Spring Ash because of his offensive stat spread, and also the fact that his physical bulk is not the worst and he can be worked out with different builds. So he's, in my opinion, the best Dagger Flyer for Arcane Void. He already comes with a pretty decent weapon, but Arcane Void is going to be a pretty good upgrade. And then we also have Thief Soth in tier 2, who does have good offensive stat spread, and even Dancer Edelyn has got the stat spread to work it out offensively, and she can also function as a dancer at the same time. Lachesis is going to be having the higher resistance so that she can support her allies with the Ploy skill, and then this weapon is going to be helping her with the combat. As always, with these kinds of dancers with high resistance, Temari Dagger is always an option. And in tier 3, I'm going to be having a bunch of older Dagger Flyers who have really similar offensive stat spread, like Spring Pala, and then Hot Springs Hinoka, Spring Kagero, who was also in Hall of Forms, Newer Air, and then finally Hot Springs Camilla. So they can run a standard offensive build, but Ash and Soth are going to be above them when it comes to better offensive stat spread. There are a bunch of Dagger Flyers who don't really want this weapon, but Mythic Air could be a borderline option if you don't really care about Sparkling Boost Plus, and if you don't really like her weapon refine. I suppose she can work out with Arcane Void with her offensive stat spread, but honestly, I think that her weapon refine is still pretty nice because of its healing, and Sparkling Boost Plus can be helpful, even though, feud status is there in the Dark Season with Embla. Its healing is pretty nice without really using any kind of action. Unfortunately, range flyers do have limited options, so you can try and stack up Remote Sparrow, Brash Assault 4, and Fleeting Echo for 65% damage reduction, and this can ensure your survival so that you can trigger lethality on your double. And because they're flying units, Guidance 4 and Soaring Guidance are pretty much going to be the best Lotsy option that you can run on them. And Flared Sparrow is also going to be an option that you can run on these flyers, and whenever we get the physical version of the Oculus Strike, which we have seen before on Mythic Gulvig, I think that could also be a good option along with Flared Sparrow so that you can get that pre-combat damage. It's going to be amazing for the nuking, but until then, Desperation 4 is something that you can run so that you can try and trigger it by using the teleportation of the Oath Echo skill, and with Cook and Pulse, Lethality does become a 2 cooldown special, which you can trigger on your double if the enemy doesn't really have any kind of guard skill. So these are the two main builds that you can run on any kind of Dagger Flyer, except for Lachesis, and for her, she does want to stack up the resistance so that she can trigger the Ploy skill and support her allies. There are not many armor Dagger units, and we do have 2 of them in the free-to-play pool, and the other 2 are in the limited 5-star lock pool. So Winter Jafar is going to be the tier 2 unit. I don't really think that we have any tier 1 armor Dagger as of yet. So he is going to be using his speed with Savvy Fighter 4 mainly. And then in tier 3 we do have the 3 Dagger armors in Winter Cecilia, Kagero, and Halloween Dozla. So they all can be useful as a far save unit with their bulk, but their bulk is not the most insane when it comes to the modern standards and the nukes that we have gotten nowadays, so they're still going to be dying, but at least with the special charges of Arcane Void, they're able to retaliate back with Armored Beacon or Armored Flow, which can be helpful, especially if you run Special Spiral on them. And then we've got Picnic Flora, who does have a decent enough weapon refine, but still, if you really want to, then Arcane Void is also a weapon that can work out with her. Winter Jafar really wants to have Savvy Fighter 4 so that he can get that damage reduction, and in Slaughter you can try and run Attack Speed Unity, especially if you're going to be running him with Legendary Male Robin, and even if you don't, then still Unity skill is going to be helping you against the visible debuffs to your attack and speed. So you just want to stack up as much speed on a speedy armor like him, and unfortunately he's going to be depending on the damage reduction so that he can tank the enemies, and without that damage reduction, it is going to be a bit hard for him. But at least Armored Beacon is going to be there as the option with the unpierceable damage reduction, which can help you against the enemy specials. And if you're a slower dagger unit, then you can definitely try and get the Fire Flood Boost 3 at the same time with Arcane Void. And this can give you the guard effect in the combat, and then you can run Special Spiral 4 so that you can pierce through the damage reduction of the enemies, because nowadays we have a lot of ranged nukes that have a ton of damage reduction skills. I mean, we also have Fleeting Echo, so piercing through the damage reduction of the enemy is actually pretty nice, even as a far savior in my opinion. And Armored Flow is going to be a pretty good special for that, and also for its damage reduction against the enemy specials. And if you just want to focus on the survival and you want to stack up as much bulk as you can, then Distant Defense 4 could be an option so that you can completely ignore the visible buffs of the enemies. And then Guard 4 could be an option in the slot B so that you can get the attack debuff on the enemy and also get some damage reduction. And of course, the guard effect itself is going to be helping you as a slow armor. Dagger Cavaliers also enjoy Arcane Void just like the Fliers, because their special charging options are Heavy Blade. So getting the special charges is pretty amazing with this weapon. And just like Armor Daggers, I don't really think that we have a tier 1 Cavalry Dagger unit as of making this video. So in tier 2, I'm going to be having Summer Lilina because of her attack stat, and also resistance, which allows her to use the ploy skills, which is going to be amazing for the sabotage effect with the weapon. And then we have got Desert Dean. Now, even though we have got Gunthra, Elise, and other units with similar stat spread offensively, Desert Dean still has better bulk because of being a more recent unit compared to them. So he can function with the damage reduction skills a bit better because of it. And then in tier 3, I'm going to be having the remaining Dagger Cavaliers in Summer Gunthra, Hot Springs Elise, and Summer Ursula, and also Summer Lind. So all of them can make use of this weapon offensively and just stack up attack and speed. And Merlinus is going to be one of those units that should be waiting until his weapon refined, because it should be in May 2024 at the rate that we're going at. And then Summer Mia is actually going to be getting weapon refined a lot earlier than many people have expected in June 2024. So their weapon refines are probably going to be better than Arcane Void, I have a feeling. Merlinus could have a funny weapon refine, but if it turns out to be bad, then Arcane Void is always going to be there. For the Dagger Cavaliers, the new Insight attack speed is actually a pretty nice skill, and just like I mentioned in the Dagger Flyer section, whenever we get the physical version of the Oculus Strike, it should be a good option with Flared Sparrow, but until then, Desperation 4 is going to be pretty good so that you can basically trigger lethality on your double. This is the main high investment offensive build that you can have on most of the Dagger Cavaliers, except for Summer Lilina, who wants to get the ploy skill, and she can run something like Lull Attack Defense in her slot B to completely neutralize any kind of visible buffs to enemies' defense, and also get Fire Flood Boost 3 at the same time while getting Arcane Void and lethality, so that does help her get the guard effect. And even though she's running a ploy skill, I don't really think that you really need like Still Water to make full use of it on her. And I think that Fire Flood Boost is going to be better because of its guard effect. I think that doubling down on the resistance does make sense if you're, a dancer, mainly there for the support. But if you're a more combat-centric unit, then other skills could be run if you have enough resistance like her. And then the other offensive option for the Dagger Cavaliers is going to be just stacking up all of the damage reduction as per usual, and Insight attack speed is going to be giving you extra offenses. This is my final Arcane Void tier list, and as you can see, there are not too many tier 1 options because a lot of the dagger units that we have got nowadays are not really as fast as the meta speed is. So unfortunately, they're going to be staying in tier 2 and especially in tier 3 when it comes to a lot of the older dagger units. But at least this weapon can give them the guaranteed follow-up attack if they lack the speed. And overall, I'm pretty happy with this weapon because of the sabotage effect built in. And along with the Tempo 4 skill that many of the infantry units can use, I think it can be really fun to just spam lethalities. So I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, then make sure to leave a like and a comment, helps you tremendously. And if you really enjoyed, you could always support me directly by using super thanks down below or by becoming a YouTube member. And for more favorite videos, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because YouTube sub boxes are about as slow as I unfortunately was when it came to making this video. So with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.